Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. What if I told you that every time you desperately wish for something good, you might actually be hardwiring the universe to send you the exact opposite? Today we're going on a mind-bending journey to engineer the foolproof wish. We are hunting for a mathematical and philosophical formula for a human intention that has zero negative consequence, no opposite, and absolutely no chance of failing. We are going to take you from the simple laws of duality all the way to questioning the very fabric of the universe itself.
Yeah, it is quite the philosophical puzzle we have in our source material today. Because what we are really unpacking is how our language, our psychology, and even the hidden mechanics of reality actively shape what we attract into our lives.
I am so ready to dive into this. And to anyone listening with us right now, before we start pulling apart the fabric of reality, if you like my channel, please subscribe and hit the like button. Okay, let us get into it. We are looking at a deeply analytical dialogue today from our sources, one that literally tries to hack the concept of wishing.
Right. But to find this perfect, unbackfireable wish, I feel like we first have to understand why our normal, everyday wishes fail so spectacularly.
And they fail a lot.
Oh, constantly. And they fail because we fall into the trap of something called scarcity consciousness and the law of duality. When we make a wish, we rarely think about what our brain is actually doing behind the scenes.
I want to dig into that mechanism
Yeah,
because the sources argue our own brains essentially betray us when we set an intention.
they do. Let's look at the psychology of a standard wish. Say you wish to be wealthy. In the very moment you form that intense desire for money, your subconscious mind doesn't actually focus on the money.
It focuses on the lack of it.
Exactly. It hyper-focuses on the fact that you currently lack it.
Yeah.
It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. Human brains are wired with a negativity bias. We are built to scan for threats and deficits to keep ourselves alive, not to be happy. So, by intensely wishing for wealth, you are basically shining a massive psychological spotlight on your own poverty. If you wish for health, your brain immediately references your vulnerability to illness.
That makes total sense. It is like you are sending out a massive distress signal, but you are trying to disguise it as a positive affirmation. The universe, or your subconscious, just hears the panic.
Right, you are amplifying the lack. And the source material provides a brilliant mathematical model to evaluate any intention you put out into the world. It breaks down the outcome of a wish into three distinct possibilities.
The +1, -1, and 0. I am a huge fan of mental frameworks like this. The +1 is pretty self-explanatory, I assume. The wish simply comes true. You ask for a specific outcome and you get it.
Yeah, the +1 is absolute victory. But the -1 is where that trap of duality really catches you. The -1 is when the exact opposite of what you wanted happens, or the wish actively brings you harm.
Let's ground this in a real-world scenario so you can really see the mechanics. Let's say I am up for a massive promotion at a tech company. I want to be the vice president of my division.
Okay, a high-stakes wish.
Right. The +1 is obvious. I get the title, the corner office, the salary bump. But what does the -1 look like in that corporate scenario?
Well, the -1 could manifest in a couple of ways.
Yeah.
Maybe you push so hard for the promotion that you completely alienate your team. And even though you get the job, you are miserable and end up burning out in 6 months.
Ouch.
Yeah, the wish for success actively harmed your life. Or the -1 could be that you tie so much of your self-worth to this promotion that when you don't get it, you spiral into a deep depression, completely ruining your current job performance.
Wow. So the -1 isn't just you don't get what you want. It is that the desire itself becomes toxic. It creates the condition for your own professional failure.
Precisely. And then the final outcome of the model is the 0.
Which is just nothing, right?
The 0 is complete stagnation. Null. You make the wish, you throw your coin in the fountain, and absolutely nothing happens. The universe gives you no feedback. You remain exactly where you are, just stuck in waiting mode.
When I was reading through the sources, I noticed they pinpointed a very specific culprit for why we risk that -1. They basically blame it all on our choice of words, specifically adjectives.
Yeah, adjectives are highly dangerous in this philosophical framework. Words like rich, healthy, happy, or successful. They are dangerous because an adjective only exists on a spectrum of comparison.
Because you can't have one without the other.
Exactly. You cannot conceptualize rich without simultaneously defining poor. You cannot understand healthy without the context of sick. If you ask the universe for an adjective, you are automatically invoking its opposite.
I see it like being on a playground seesaw. If you push one side up, say, you push the adjective rich high up into the air, the other side poor, is fundamentally attached to the same plank.
It has to go down.
Right, it bears all the weight and tension. You cannot just slice off one end of a seesaw and expect it to work. So my challenge for us today is, how do we get off the seesaw entirely? How do we build an intention that simply doesn't have a -1 attached to it?
To do that, we have to completely overhaul our linguistic and conceptual framework. We have to abandon adjectives altogether and move toward processes and nouns.
I think I am following the logic, because a process doesn't possess a direct opposite in the same way an adjective does.
Let's test it. If you wish for an adjective like smart, the opposite is stupid. But if you wish for a process like expansion or a state of being like wholeness or competence, you break the duality.
So how does expansion work in practice?
Let's look at the process of expansion. If your mental capacity or your awareness expands, it operates as a one-way street. Think about learning to read. Once you truly understand how letters form words, you cannot simply unlearn how to read.
That is a great point. If I spend years learning how to play the piano, I might get rusty, but I can't suddenly unknow what a C major chord is. The knowledge is permanent.
Exactly. Expansion only travels in one direction. By wishing for expansion, you eliminate the -1 because there is no true opposite to becoming more whole other than just hitting the pause button. You don't actively unbecome whole.
The sources take this idea of dodging the -1 even further with a concept they call the mirror theory. This completely shifted how I view my own goals.
It's a fascinating concept. The mirror theory asks us to imagine that reality itself operates like a giant reflective surface. When you stand in front of a mirror and raise your right hand, which represents your +1 intention, what does the reflection actually do?
It raises its left hand, it flips the image.
It optically reverses your action. The philosophy here is that if reality acts as a mirror, any directional, forceful wish you make is going to be reversed upon manifestation. You push positive, the universe reflects negative.
So the grand question becomes, how do we stop the universe from reversing our intention? I was trying to guess the answer to this while reading.
What did you come up with?
I thought, well, if the universe flips everything, do we just wish for something totally neutral? Like, I wish for a moderate Tuesday, just to fly under the radar so the mirror doesn't give us a terrible reflection.
Huh. Wishing for a moderate Tuesday is still playing the game of adjectives, just with lower stakes. The solution the sources propose is far more elegant. You need a symmetrical wish.
A symmetrical wish?
Right. You need an intention that looks exactly the same even when it's flipped in a mirror. Think of the letter O. If you hold up an O to a mirror, the reflection is still a perfect O. It does not matter that it has been reversed.
Okay, love the visual. But what is the human psychological equivalent of the letter O?
According to this deep dive, the ultimate symmetrical wish is meaning or awareness. If your core intention is, I wish to find meaning in whatever happens, you have created an unbeatable formula.
So back to the tech company example. If life gives you the promotion and the wealth, the +1, you win. Because your wish wasn't for the money, it was for meaning. And you will find purpose in how you use those new resources.
Exactly. And if the mirror flips my intention,
And life gives me the -1, I get passed over or I lose my job entirely.
you still win.
Yeah.
Because, again, your wish was never for the title. You will find the lesson, the resilience, and the meaning within that failure or poverty.
Right.
You have effectively neutralized the universe's ability to harm you with a -1.
Right hand, left hand, wealth, poverty, it doesn't matter. The awareness remains central and constant.
Totally bulletproof.
That is an incredible safety net. But I have to push back here using the mathematical model we set up. I agree we have solved the -1, but what about the 0?
Ah, the zero state.
Yeah, symmetrical wishes are great, but what if that grand mirror of reality is just, well, too far away? What if I am shouting my wish for meaning, but the mirror is miles in the distance, so I get absolutely no reflection back?
You just get nothing.
Right, life gives me nothing. I'm stranded in that 0 state of total stagnation.
That brings us to the ultimate test of the foolproof wish. A distant mirror leads us to an even more extreme scenario detailed in the sources. What happens in a pitch-black room where the mirror is entirely useless?
This is where the philosophy gets intensely practical for everyday life. I mean, we've all felt like we were in the dark room at some point.
Definitely. The dark room represents absolute uncertainty. It is the ultimate zero state. No feedback, no light, no reflection. Imagine you are standing in a pitch-black room, and your wish is to be rich. That wish is entirely useless to you.
Because you can't see anything.
Right. A pile of gold could be 2 feet away, but you can't see it, so it doesn't exist for you.
But if you shift that wish away from the external adjective, away from the gold, and instead wish to recognize reality,
Then your wish suddenly functions as night vision goggles.
yes, because in the dark room, the reality is the darkness. If your wish is simply to recognize reality, you aren't ignoring the dark, you are acknowledging it. You are saying, I accept that I am in the dark.
And that alone breaks the zero state.
Exactly, because you are no longer passively waiting for the lights to come on. You are actively observing your environment.
And it goes one step further. If you upgrade that wish to living your truth, you remove the need for the mirror or any external light source entirely.
Because I don't need a reflection if I am generating the light myself.
Exactly the concept. If your internal truth is to be a source of light, the darkness of the room just becomes the blank canvas for you to shine. But this introduces a profound tension that the sources grapple with.
Which is,
What happens when your reality violently clashes with your truth?
let me make sure I understand the difference between those two words in this context.
Okay, let's say your physical reality is that you're trapped. Maybe you're stuck in a deeply abusive work environment or dealing with a severe chronic physical illness. That dark room, that is your reality, the undeniable circumstance.
Okay.
But your inner truth, your essence, is a desire for absolute freedom, creativity, and vitality. How do you reconcile a reality of confinement with a truth of freedom?
It feels like the seesaw problem again. It seems like you are forced to pick one. You either accept the depressing reality and give up your inner truth, or you stubbornly cling to your truth and live in complete denial of reality.
That is the exact trap most people fall into: delusion or despair. But the philosophical solution here is brilliant. It asks us to understand that reality is merely the layer, like the weather.
You don't control the rain.
Right. Truth, however, is the essence, your internal foundation. The sources reference the great Stoic philosopher Epictetus to illustrate this perfectly.
I am somewhat familiar with Epictetus, but let's break down his specific situation because his life was the ultimate darkroom.
It really was. Epictetus was born into slavery in ancient Rome. He was physically owned by another human being, and historically it is said his master violently broke his leg, leaving him disabled. That was his undeniable, brutal reality.
He couldn't just wish it away.
No. But his inner truth was that he was a free-thinking, sovereign philosopher.
So he didn't slip into delusion. He didn't walk around saying, I am not a slave, my leg isn't broken.
Precisely. He didn't ignore the reality of his chains, but he absolutely refused to let the chains define his essence. He recognized the reality of his broken leg, but he claimed complete sovereignty over his mind. He synthesized the two.
So his intention essentially became, my reality is physical slavery, but I will put my truth, my total freedom of mind, into action within this reality.
That synthesis creates the ultimate unbreakable wish. I wish to put my truth into action within whatever reality I find myself. Think about how powerful that is.
That's amazing.
It has no -1 because you are fully accepting the harsh reality without letting it destroy you. And it has no 0 because you are constantly taking action based on your truth rather than waiting for your circumstances to change.
Sitting with this, it's wildly empowering. You are deciding what kind of person you're going to be in the dark. But as I follow this logic, it brings up a massive, almost intimidating scale up for me.
What is the leap you're making?
If I start seeking my ultimate truth so deeply and I start taking all this ownership by acting as my own light source, doesn't that inevitably force me to question the dark room itself?
How do you mean?
Well, if I realize I have this profound truth inside me, don't I eventually have to look at the walls and ask why I was built this way? Who constructed the room?
Oh, wow. You are hitting the exact philosophical bedrock the sources lead us to.
Yes.
Questioning your own truth organically forces you to zoom out. Once you understand the reality of a single brick, you are fundamentally forced to look up and examine the entire architecture of the building.
We are jumping from personal psychology to the cosmos.
We are, but it is a natural bridge.
Yeah.
The sources referred to this as a fractal reality. A fractal is a mathematical shape where every tiny microscopic part contains the exact pattern of the whole.
Like a snowflake.
Exactly. The tiny jagged edge of one crystal reflects the geometry of the entire snowflake. If you truly deeply understand the reality of a single microscopic moment of your life, if you find your truth in that 1 second, you suddenly hold a blueprint for the entire universe.
So the foolproof wish is essentially a Trojan horse. You think you're just trying to figure out how to stop your goals from backfiring or how to survive a bad job, and suddenly you are staring at the underlying code of the cosmos.
And this brings us to the ultimate fork in the road of this entire philosophical journey. Once you look at the cosmos, once you examine the room, You are faced with two distinct paths to explain the universe, Path A and Path B.
Let's walk down path A first.
Path A is the path of perfect creation. If you look at the universe and believe it has a deliberate, flawless design, an architect, then seeking your inner truth inevitably leads you to the creator of that design.
Because you are a fractal of the whole.
Right. Understanding yourself means understanding the divine. In certain spiritual traditions, this state of deep, intimate knowing is called marfatullah.
Let me make sure I am grasping that term, marfatullah.
It is a concept often found in Sufi philosophy. It translates roughly to the spiritual knowledge of the divine. But the key mechanism is that this knowledge is not found by looking outward at the sky. It is achieved by looking inward.
So by knowing your own essence perfectly, you recognize the perfection of the creator.
Exactly. So in Path A, you realize you aren't just a random brick thrown into the dark. You are a vital piece of a flawless whole.
You shift from just observing the art on the wall to actually meeting the artist. The foolproof wish, the search for meaning, leads to absolute unity.
That is the ultimate +1. But the sources recognize that not everyone will take Path A. What if someone listening is firmly on Path B?
Path B being the belief that there is no artist at all.
Yes. Path B is the path of flawed or random creation.
Hmm.
What if you look at the universe and you don't see a grand design? What if you see a random coincidence of gas and dust?
Or what if you just see chaos, suffering, and a system that is inherently broken or entirely meaningless? If someone believes they are just a biological accident in a chaotic void, does our entire mathematical model break? Does the foolproof wish fall apart?
That is the genius of the framework. No, it doesn't break. If you believe the universe is chaotic or meaningless, the very act of seeking your truth is what saves you from being swallowed by that chaos.
Walk me through the mechanics of how that protects you.
Because noticing the flaw frees you from it. If the grand mirror of the universe is cracked and distorted, recognizing that it is cracked means you stop trusting its reflection.
You stop waiting for a chaotic universe to hand you a neat, orderly purpose.
Exactly. Instead, your foolproof wish adapts into something even more resilient. I wish to create my own meaning within this absolute meaninglessness.
That completely flips the script. You stop being a victim of the random chaos and you become the author of your own reality.
In Path B, you don't meet the artist. You become the artist. You look at the dark, empty room and you say, there is no inherent meaning here, so I will build it myself from scratch.
You dodge the -1 of existential despair.
Yes, and you dodge the 0 of apathy by taking total, unapologetic creative control of your existence.
I just want to pause and synthesize the sheer brilliance of this safety net we have uncovered today. We started this journey just trying to figure out how to make a simple wish that doesn't blow up in our faces. We realized that our brains betray us and that adjectives trap us on a seesaw of opposites.
So we evolved our language.
Right. We moved to processes like awareness and wholeness.
And we removed the -1.
Then we tackled the 0 state. We learned how to survive the pitch-black room by deciding to become our own light source, synthesizing our harsh reality with our inner truth, just like Epictetus. And the most beautiful part is the scaling up.
How so?
Well, whether you believe you are a sacred fractal piece of a grand divine puzzle, or just a biological anomaly floating in a completely random cosmic void, the wish still holds up.
Because at its core, the perfect wish is never about forcing the external world to change. It is always about upgrading your internal hardware so that it can process, survive, and find meaning in whatever the external world throws at you.
It is a total masterclass in perception. It teaches us how to maneuver through the terrifying uncertainty of daily life, and most importantly, how to take unshakable ownership of our reality, regardless of the circumstances we are handed.
It serves as a potent reminder that we possess far more agency than we realize, even when we feel entirely trapped by our reality.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. We have established that in the darkroom of life, your own awareness, your own truth, acts as your only reliable light source. So when you look at your biggest struggles right now, the things that feel like they are keeping you confined in the dark, are you still standing there waiting for the universe to finally turn on the lights, or are you finally ready to illuminate the room yourself